Hey everyone, I believe we're live. I hope we're live.
We're live.
I'm looking on YouTube on my channel. We're live. Uh,
Yeah.
at any rate, hey there everyone. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're doing a simulcast on Kevin's channel, my channel. We're also doing it on Facebook, Rumble, all over the place tonight. So tonight what I wanted to do, since got Kevin on and he's doing all this cool stuff with his van, I want to talk about alternative energy, grid down energy, and specifically solar a lot more than everything else. But at the same time, the sort of the system that you're working on right now, being the Nomad, basically the broken Nomad on YouTube, it lends itself to preparedness because it's sort of the same type of situation. So, and we'll go through that in more detail. Before we get into all of this stuff, though, explain to those two or three people out there that don't know who you are and what you're doing and all that stuff. So, what are you staring at?
Um, I'm watching the chats come in. It's weird. Hey, Jason. Hey, Bree. Sorry, I totally spaced out on the question.
Just let everyone know where they can find you, what you're doing, and all that stuff. And we're going to go through your van a little bit later, so I suppose you don't have to go into much detail about that.
The Broken Nomad on YouTube and most other places. And yeah, I'm currently rebuilding my van from lessons learned when I was on the road for about a month prior to this. And so, yeah, did a test run, found out the things that worked that I liked, found out a lot more things I didn't like, so I'm doing it. But the power part of it was I'm not changing any of that. That's all awesome, rock solid. Totally happy with the solar and the power, and that won't be changing. The location will be changing. We'll talk about that later, but that's right. Embrace the suck.
Yeah, local prepper. What's going on?
Please.
Yeah, you got quite a few people in here in the chat, probably more than me right now. So yeah,
I'm the man.
Yeah, you are. And but while I'm on that, I suppose I just wanted to mention a couple things too. We are going to start from the really basic stuff and then sort of work our way up because like people on your channel, this is probably going to be like going back to kindergarten for some of them, right? And even some of the people on my channel, some of the preppers really know their stuff when it comes to solar and especially alternative energy and stuff. But for those people that don't, maybe those people, even people watching your channel that want to get into the whole nomadic lifestyle thing, maybe they don't know anything about it. And when you start talking about all the big stuff, it's like you're talking a foreign language or something. So I want to start small, start with the basic stuff, and then we'll get into your stuff, basically, the things that you're doing and the setup that is far more advanced than anything I've got going on, and probably a lot of people. So. And one other thing too, as we talk about, I've got some websites that I'm going to pull up and we're going to talk about some solar panels and charge controllers and these products that we're putting up is not you got to go out and buy this. What we did, and I had to basically trick Kevin into getting me some links of reputable companies. So these are just examples. These are just reputable companies. When it comes to solar, there's a million different variables that go into all of this stuff, and we're going to talk about some of that today. So just because you see like the Battleborns on here, super expensive, doesn't mean you necessarily have to go that route, although you do get what you pay for with a lot of this stuff. So at any rate, anything to add before we jump into all this stuff?
And we'll get into this, but just so everyone's aware, it took me, probably 4 years or so to do all the research before I did pick all these different components. Get what you can afford. Just because we're talking about Battleborns and Victron, that's not for everybody, especially if they're just starting out. And if you can't afford it, you get what you can get that works for you. And I'm not made of money. It took me a long time to save up for some of the stuff, especially for the batteries, because that was not cheap. But get what you can afford.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon over on Rumble. I'm going to try to check in on Rumble every once in a while. Those chat comments don't come through here because Rumble hasn't caught up up yet, but I suppose what we'll do is we'll start off by, say somebody is just, starting to get into this and trying to figure out what they're going to do. What are the first steps that they should take? Say they just want to prepare for, a day or two with the power being out, and they're not worried about the refrigerator and just a basic setup. Or maybe they are. So what should somebody do as far as figuring out what they need to get?
Yeah, figure out how much power you're actually going to need. Are you going to be just charging your cell phone? Are you charging your cell phone, your laptop, a tablet, a GPS, and a whole bunch of other stuff? Find out how much power you're going to need, and then build it all based off of that.
Yeah.
You can get a really small, tiny system, or you might need a much bigger system. It all depends on what your needs are going to be.
Yeah. And it's sort of difficult figuring all that stuff out because you've got some appliances that won't tell you what the watts are, but they'll tell you. I mean, there's just a bunch of confusing calculations. You've got some stuff that's pretty easy to figure out. I've got this. I've linked. All these links are down below too, but I linked to this article, and mainly just for this part right here to kind of show people the conversions. And I've got a watt hours calculator on here. I don't use that because I'm pretty sure it's wrong. I was looking at it today and I was like, that's not right. But there's 100 million of those. Well, maybe not 100 million, but there's a bunch of them on the internet that you can go and calculate this stuff.
Yeah.
But amps is watts divided by volts, correct?
Yep.
And then volts is watts divided by amps. And then watts is volts times amps. Yeah, that's in here.
Yeah, I decided to keep it much simpler, and I got a thing you plug in the wall, you plug in your thing to that, and it tells you exactly how much you used.
I think I've got that the website right here. It's this digital power meter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And you were talking to me earlier about this, and basically it's you plug it in between. So you plug the refrigerator, say it's a refrigerator. You plug the refrigerator into that, and you plug that into the wall, and then it takes constant readings. Is that what it does?
Yeah, basically it's in line. Basically, if I plug in a toaster right to the wall, you plug it into that, you plug that into the wall, and however much power your toaster uses, that tells you how much power you've used to make toast. So if you're trying to figure out and add up, how much is my cell phone going to use to charge it? How much is my toaster? How much is my whatever things you're going to need to charge? Do what I did is I spent about a week and I just plugged it in, and it keeps the whole history. So you don't have to write anything down. You just hit a button. It'll tell you you've consumed 1 kilowatt or 500 watts or whatever it is. That'll give you a good starting point, and then just add a little more as like a little buffer and use that to plan how much battery or power and then how much solar you'll need to refill that power into the battery. You're not running off the solar panels, you're running off what's in the battery.
Yeah, and we'll go into all the four pieces in more in depth, but the solar is just to recharge the battery. The battery is what you're getting. And that's where all the different sizes come in. How big of a solar panel? What size of a battery? How many amps? What does the charge controller need to be? All sorts of different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just for the basic prepper, I mean, it doesn't have to be, as detailed as this, but when you're putting together a setup for, say, an off the grid situation or whatever it is, you do want to be pretty accurate. And with appliances being different makes and models and years and ages and all those different things, you can get online and figure out a good estimate of something, but it may be totally different if you were to use something like this. So, and for $13-14, just be kind of cool to see what your refrigerator's doing.
Exactly. Yeah. My fridge takes up. It's funny because if my fridge is full, my 12-volt fridge, not the big one in the kitchen, but the one in the van, the fuller that is, the less power the fridge takes to keep everything cold.
Yeah, that's a really good example too. Yeah, like same as with a freezer. The more food you have in there, the less energy it's going to use. And when the electricity goes out, that stuff is going to stay frozen longer because there's more stuff in there. So yeah, very good point. Yeah. So all that, take all of that stuff into consideration. Now, if you're building a little, I think a couple of people were talking in the chat about a little, he started with 1,000-watt power station. If you're going to do a couple lights and you're just, it's emergency type stuff, maybe not necessary to get that granular with everything, but doesn't hurt.
And again, and we'll talk about this later, which is better, buying a pre-built unit or building it yourself. There's pros and cons, and we'll go into that later when we talk about that part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the 4 main components of building. Solar system just doesn't sound right, but that's what it is, right?
Your power system.
Solar setup.
Solar is only one little part of it. The rest is other normal electronics.
Yeah. So what we'll do, let me pull this up. And like I said, just because I'm pulling up these different types of solar panels and all that stuff doesn't mean this is the one you should get or anything like that. This is just ones, like I said, I pulled Kevin's arm and got a few of reputable companies. So there's a whole lot of knockoff crap on Amazon. So just do your research with all this stuff. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the top of the line stuff like this. Is Rich Solar pretty top of the line?
Rich Solar is really good. I have those panels on my truck as well. So the video you did a while ago on my bug out truck, those panels are still there, and those are rich solar panels too. I even called them because I had a question, because I saw when I was buying their panels, I saw the same. I wasn't sure if they were the same panels for 2 different prices on their website and Amazon. It's like, I want to make sure I get the right ones. And I called them, talked to a person right off the bat. We talked for about 15 minutes, extremely helpful, very knowledgeable. And they're like, yeah, you're basically buy them on Amazon now because they're going to go up about $75 tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And what can somebody expect? That's a 200-watt panel, but say, like I've got a Renogy 100-watt panel. And you were telling me too, Renogy's got the big name, right? But I believe this was you. Yeah, but you're paying for the name, really, right?
Yeah, especially with panels. I mean, panels they've come a long way just in the last 5 years. Some companies have really good products. Some companies have okay products, but you're paying for the name. I'm not going to bash any companies, but I chose Rich Solar over the competition because there's a whole bunch of reasons that went into it, but their performance, the reliability, and their price.
Yeah.
And I have Rich panels on my truck, and that they've been on my truck now for I forget how many years, and they're rock solid. Been through, I don't know, a dozen or so hailstorms, not a scratch. So I just prefer Rich Solar. I like their panels.
Yeah.
The company is good. So,
hey, Anthony's in the chat here from Australia. What's going on, Anthony? And he just mentioned, and I'll let you kind of respond to this. If you try to power an existing appliance with solar and battery, you'll end up spending a fortune. Find out what the hungry ones are and look for RV caravan replacements that are 12 volt.
Depends. I mean, I can run everything I need. Again, it depends on your system. If you have a bunch of hungry electronics, the biggest thing you want to focus on is the inverter, to get a pure sine wave inverter. And that way it doesn't screw up your high-end electronics like your phone, laptop, things like that. And then how long do you need to power it? Are you going to be going out in the bush for a month? Then you want to have a decent amount of solar panels to charge the batteries and a decent battery bank. And how often are you going to use them? Versus someone who wants to use it on a weekend camping trip and not all that much. Or someone like me who's going to be, that's my sole source of power. That's it. Well, that's not it. We'll get into the alternatives later and the way I've designed it and what I have for backups. But that's it. Every person is going to be different as far as what they're going to need, how long they need it for, what they're going to use it for. So,
Yeah.
Great resource to study to get the knowledge. Go on YouTube and watch Will Prowse, DIY solar power with Will Prowse. I spent a lot of time watching his videos, and now he's got a forum where you can pick the brain of engineers who do this for a living from other companies. And I mean, any question you ask, you'll get 50 people that'll answer it.
Yeah. And ask questions tonight too. And if we get to them in the chat, we can respond to it. Kevin's got quite a bit of knowledge on this. I've got the basic thing. I've got the basic thing down.
You got the cart squared away.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of it's one of those things, and we're going to get back on this stuff, but it's one of those things you don't know what you don't know. And it's sort of when you get to that point, that's when you have to research it. So it does take a lot of time. That article I showed in the beginning goes through how I set up my solar generator, real basic one, old school one. But that gives you an idea of just the basics of all the stuff that we're talking about today. And then just expand on that. Will Prowse and all these other guys. Yeah, I mean, there's just a wealth of knowledge out there about the solar stuff, solar setups anymore. So,
hey, really quick, a question I just saw pop up from Local Prepper. How do you feel about starting with portable power stations? That's what I did. I have 3 Bluettis in total, and that's actually what powered my van the first 4 days I was in it, while I was wiring everything together out on the road.
Yeah.
And they worked out great. They ran everything, my fridge, my laptop charger, my phone, everything. So
Local Prepper's jumping us ahead in the show here because we are going to talk about all that stuff.
We're going to hit all that.
But I tell you what, we're on it, so let's talk about it now, because there are different options as far as the portable power station and building your own. You were talking about putting one in a milk crate and doing things like that. What are the pros and cons of just buying a Jackery or something of that, the pre-built thing, as opposed to putting those pieces together for yourself?
So it's really simple. You buy it, you take it out of the box, you charge it, and you use it. You're done. You don't have to have. You need zero knowledge of how anything works other than you turn it on, you plug it in, and it works.
That's Lisa style.
Until it doesn't work. So I have 3 of them, not because I don't know how this stuff works, but those are kind of backups. So in case something happens, or I need more power for something, or I go somewhere and I need to bring one of them with me. I mean, they're portable. I can pick it up and carry it with me. Compared to building it yourself, you know what you're putting in. If you want to upgrade the charge controller, you can upgrade the charge controller and you're done. That's all you need to do. If you need to have if you want to run an air conditioning and you only have a 500 watt inverter, well, you're going to need a minimum, I would think, of a 2000 watt inverter. So you disconnect the cables, you plug in the new one, probably want to upgrade your cables so they're thicker and don't get warm and become a fire hazard. But that's it. You can't do that with the ones out of the box. You're stuck with what they come with, and that's it. Your choice is to buy a bigger unit, and they're thousands of dollars now.
Yeah.
For a big enough one.
That article I was talking about of mine, and don't judge me because this is like 10 years old, but this is sort of like I'm going to do this differently, and it's going to be a whole lot smaller, and we'll get into that. But this is a lead acid battery, suitcase solar panels, only like 12 watts, which totally suck. But this is sort of what we're kind of going at with the put it in a milk crate type thing, right? It's got the inverter on there. It's got the charge controller, the battery in the box. But these days, it's just so much easier and so much lighter, so much more convenient. So when you've got those Jackeries, from a prepper perspective, you grab that sucker, you throw it in your truck, your car, whatever, and you're out. If you've got something put in a milk crate, all tied down and nice and snug, sort of the same type of situation.
Grab the milk crate and you go.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas old school, like the one I just showed, you're lugging that sucker around, and the lead acid battery. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but lead acid batteries are a lot heavier. You can't tilt them on their sides or anything. So just battery technology from when I wrote that article till now is just, light speed ahead of where it used to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Plus
preppers.
AGM's off gas, and you can't have it in the cabin you sleep, and it's a whole. Then it becomes a safety issue, and that's a whole another conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get back to the 4 components. We talked about the solar panels. And by the way, if we go off on another tangent, the 4 components are solar panels, charge controller, battery, and then inverter. I mean, that's the 4 things you really need to think about just to get up and running. Mm-hmm. But the next one, what do I have here? I got to see where I'm at on my notes here. So hard to find my notes. Oh, the charge controller.
Yeah. So after you have the basics, right? You got your solar panels, a way to get the power in the batteries. It passes through the charge controller. So you got those 3 things done. And then if you're running 110 volt, you'll need the inverter. If you're only running 12 volt, you don't need the inverter, right? You'll need a little 12 volt fuse panel to connect everything, but that's it. Once you have those, kind of to add on and step up your game a little bit, you'd want to have a way to monitor how much power is actually in your batteries and what you're currently using. So there's things like a smart shunt, and there should be a picture of that and a link in your show note. But let me, instead of just good one, let me just mention them all first. We can go through it. So there's a way to monitor your battery, which is not the same as a BMS that's in the battery. They kind of do the same things, but they're different. So a way for you to check how much is left, how much power do I have left in the batteries? Can I turn on my induction cooktop and make dinner? Or, I'm using the propane stove tonight to cook because it was cloudy all day and I have to wait. Or, let me hit a switch and turn on my vehicle and let my alternator pass through another device to charge the batteries instead of solar. Or will I need to break out the generator? Or 1,000 other different ways to do it. But once you have the basics done, which is why I like building my own system, I can add components as I grow.
Yeah.
Add another battery. I can put more solar panels on the roof. I can add more monitoring to it. I can get really fancy if I want to, or I can just keep it the way it is and it works and it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what were we just on? Charge controllers?
So charge controllers,
or no, was that what you were talking about? Or were you talking about inverters?
Oh, no, I was talking about a battery monitoring system, like there's a bunch of companies make their own unique things, but pretty much they go inline to your battery's negative cable, and either they have a readout or they connect to Bluetooth on your phone. But they tell you how much power you have in your battery, how much you're using out of your battery right now, and then depending on some of the components like the charge controller, the one I have is also Bluetooth. So if I look at my phone, I can see how much I have coming in from the solar and how much I have in the battery and how much I'm using out of the battery. So I can say, I'm good for the rest of the day because everything is charged up. Run my fridge and charge my phone. I don't have to worry about it. I can move on and do whatever I'm going to do. It doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about, I'm going to run out of power. Yep.
Yeah. So you got the solar panels that go to the charge controller. This is the one you were just talking about. I forgot to pull it up. That's why I was all looking around like crazy. But, and this is a fairly expensive one, right? So it doesn't need to be this expensive. But you do need something. There are some with little readout screens on it. Mm-hmm. This one has all the bells and whistles and all that stuff that you were just talking about. And it really allows you to monitor things and see exactly what you're doing. And we are going to get into more detail about the whole setup he's got. If you want to go that big route.
We'll get into PWM versus MPPT a little bit later on. I don't want to confuse anybody right off the bat.
Yeah, we are kind of talking about it. So maybe just like in basic terms, Is it okay to just go ahead and get an MPPT? Is it wise to go ahead and just get one?
Yeah.
Will it do the same thing?
Oh, the MPPT is the better controller to get.
All encompassing, right?
So a PWM controller, pulse. Oh crap, I forget. PWM, pulse width modulation. It's the crappier one to get, really, if you're going to be working with a really cheap AGM battery, and you're only going to use it to run a light on your barn, for example, for Dale. You don't need to get an MPPT because you're only, I mean, it's the light goes out at night. It's just going to suck in whatever is in the battery. It doesn't need to be a smart system. Don't forget your PWM, yeah. PMF, yeah. It's doing one job. It's doing one thing. It doesn't need to be a smart system. You don't need to, make sure everything hitting the panels is making its way into the battery, right? Because you're going to run a light for maybe 8-9 hours at night. The draw is really minimal. It's not going to drain your battery, so you're not too worried about it. A system where you're going to have electronics and stuff, you definitely want to get the MPPT. And again, it's been a long week already, so I forget what a lot of the acronyms mean, like MPPT, multi-point something tracking. So yeah, I mean, Google it if you're not sure.
They're all going to forget anyway by the time
I am not the expert in this stuff. I can tell you what I did, what I learned, but I am no expert on any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from my experience, because I've spent way more money than it looks like, because I bought these things, found out that they're crap, and there's a bin somewhere with all this crap in it that I don't use.
Yeah.
I bought the same thing. I bought the same component 3 or 4 times until I found the one that works the way I'm expecting it to work, and now I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, this one is 200 and something. I think I mean, you can get them for like $60. This one is 30 amps.
On Amazon for PWM. You won't get an MPPT for that much, but yeah, you can get a charge controller for $15 on Amazon. It depends on your application.
Yeah. Well, and it's like everything with all this stuff. You get what you pay for. So
exactly.
And like when we get into the stuff that you're doing, future proofing some of this stuff. So maybe just go ahead and get that MPPT right off the bat. Then you don't have to worry about it. Don't pull a Dale, basically, and get the cheaper one, because most of the stuff I'm doing is just for testing. You're actually using it, so I can afford a little bit on the cheaper route. But you can get them for a little bit less than that. And if you're going just to, like me, with testing and stuff, you can, try the little cheap one, see what the limitations are and all that stuff. It may crap out on you. It may, it really depends. But if you want something for some sort of grid down situation, something just like everything in prepping, you want to get through a situation. You don't want that supply or whatever it is to fail on you. So make sure you get a good one.
While you're out there and you're relying on it, because if that $15 PWM charge controller fails, all you have is what's already in your battery. That's it.
Yeah.
Unless you have a DC to DC charger and short power and a whole bunch of other stuff we'll talk about later, you're done. That's all you're going to have in the battery, and that's it.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to the batteries. And I know this is probably the most expensive battery on the market, is it?
As far as I know, yeah.
Battleborn.
Batteries on a whole are going to be your biggest expense.
Yeah. Now this Battleborn right here is almost $1,000, but you showed me a couple too that are pretty decent quality that you can get for $600, right?
Yeah. The SOK. So when I built out the truck, I had already got one Battleborn, because at the time I was told that's the best there is. And I'm not buying it just because it was the best, but it had the best warranty. It had the longest charge cycle life. and they're built here in the USA in Nevada. And my thinking behind it was, I don't want to buy something cheap from China. And when I'm out there in the middle of nowhere, this is again, I was living out of my truck, spending a lot of time on ranches, doing feral hog control. Um, I needed power to recharge batteries for the scope and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't want anything to fail. So I figured, you know what? Let me just get that one. And SOK, I didn't even know about then. So I got the one battle board. I figured I'm never going to get more than one. No big deal. And then the SOKs, they've been around, but they didn't have the name like they do now, and known for their quality and reliability. They're the biggest competitor, I think, to Battleborn. I don't know where they're made, but now they have very similar warranties. I like them because they have built-in Bluetooth. So the batteries themselves, you can hook up right to your phone with Bluetooth and find out exactly what's going on without having to go through any other piece of equipment to do that.
Yeah.
Like for my batteries, I have to get a shunt. Well, that was another $200. The SOKs have it built in, and they're a lot less than the Battleboard. So when I was doing the van, I was like, I have one Battleborn. How's that going to work if I get a couple of SOKs? Are they going to play nice together? Did some talking to some people and did some research, and was like, you know what? I'll just keep them all the same. In my mind, that's preventing problems later on.
Yeah.
Something happens. Okay, is it the Battleborn? Is it the SOK? Tear down the entire system to find out. It was another part, not the. It's less hassle down the road. So yeah, I mean, I spent the money, but I'm not worried about it. And now if I got to drive to Nevada, twist my arm. Okay, I'll make it.
Yeah. Well, and this one's 100 amp hours, and for preppers and stuff, I mean, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, 100 amp hours is pretty good. I mean, as far as what you would want to do in sort of some sort of grid down situation, but it doesn't have to be that big. They make 75, 50. I've got a 20 right here, and it's basically just enough. And I think it's a 300 watt inverter, just enough to maybe power a tablet, a couple lights. Not a whole lot, but it's if it's the middle of the night and the power's off for a little bit, kids are screaming and yelling or whatever, you could plug something like that in. The one thing we were going to talk about too is the benefits of, is if I pull this up, the benefits these days, I sort of alluded to it earlier, of the lithium ion, the Life PO4s, because you can bring them inside, like I was just talking about, and you can tip them over, you can move them around, you can power things in the house without having to grab a big extension cord, or like that charger, or that solar charger thing, DIY solar charger that I had, lugging the whole dolly in the house and all that stuff. On these, this is Battleborn stats I got from their website, but it shows you the difference as far as the self-discharge, the cycles. I mean, there's just so many. And what does a lead acid battery, a 200 amp hour lead acid go for? Is it about the same 600?
I have no idea because I have no intention of ever buying one.
I haven't done it in a while.
But the biggest, I mean, I buy one for my truck and not my van. Well, no, because my van they're all brand new. But the biggest thing is, the two biggest things is, if you have a 200 amp hour AGM, you can only use 100 amp hours, because with AGM, once it goes below 50%, it's dead. It'll kill it. Yeah. The other thing about AGM is they off gas. So if you have it inside of your van, your truck, your cabin, whatever, and it's off gassing, I wouldn't want to be sleeping with that. That can make you take a pretty good dirt nap pretty quick.
Yeah.
Whereas the lithium iron phosphate, they don't off gas at all. Work trailer with a 200 watt inverter and batteries and yep. Bingo. Yeah.
I don't think my little 20 hours is going to run I don't even think it run anything.
But it can also
other than a light and a tablet.
Yeah. So go back to what I said in the beginning. You need to figure out what you have as far as requirements for your power. If you don't need all that much, you don't need to buy all that much.
Hmm.
If you're going to be powering a cabin and you want to be able to power it for a week with lights, a refrigerator, a microwave, maybe some air conditioning, then yeah, you're going to need a truly off-grid system, and you're going to spend some money because it's there's no getting around it. You're gonna spend money on something, whether it be batteries, charge controllers, panels. You're gonna spend money, and let me tell you right now, cable is not cheap. I got 15 feet of 2-aught gauge pure copper cable, and it was $135 just for the 2-aught gauge. Then I had to buy the 8 gauge, the 6 gauge, the 4 gauge, all varying sizes because each component, like my DC to DC charger, takes a 4 gauge from the alternator to the unit, and then um, I think it's 8 gauge from that unit to the bus bars. So you have to buy different size cables and different lengths. And now when when I redo it, I have to buy yet more cable because I can't reuse all the cables that I made and buy all the lugs and the heat shrink. So yeah, I'll have to spend more money to rebuild it, which is fine, um, because that's going to supply me with power pretty much unlimited as I travel the country doing all my stuff. It'll keep my food cold. It'll let me use it'll let me cook dinner and food and make my coffee. So I'm willing to spend the money because I know what I'm getting back out of it. To me, it's worth it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone is going to have their own requirements, their own budget. You know, you got to do for you. You
Yeah.
don't base it on me. Don't base it on something else. Base it on what your needs and requirements are. Stay within your budget, and you're good to go.
And if you're just starting out, you just want to test things and figure out the process, how everything works, go cheap. I mean, that's my philosophy on everything. And then I figure out before I make some of those mistakes before I spend a whole bunch of money on certain things. Unlike I did when I bought the marine battery a while back and I neglected it and toasted it. And that was a waste of, I think, like $400 or $500, something like that.
Ouch.
Yeah. So that won't happen again. But at the same time, you get those small charge controllers. You get the smaller, just get a 500 watt inverter, or somebody was in the chat talking about 1500 watt. They used that and it wasn't big enough to run the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Also with the inverters, and then I'll get a little bit on these things and then these cords you're just talking about, but also on the inverter, if you're only using 500 watts, there's no reason to have a 1500 watt inverter because you're just wasting power, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And inverters, just for being on, also consume power.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's something to keep in mind too.
Yep. And we are going to go into those next, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but you were talking about wire gauges and stuff and the length of wire. I pulled up this chart, and this bottom one right here doesn't have the really large, I guess it's small gauge, the below 10. The larger the cable, the lower the number as far as the gauge goes.
Yep.
And the longer the length. And I mean, it all just plays into it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You'll have to consult a wire gauge, and there's thousands of them on the internet. For example, if my batteries are going to be at the back of the van, and my inverter and everything else is going to be at the front of the van, that's 11.5 feet. So 10 feet of cable. What's my power loss going to be? So using that chart, if you're going to be pushing 400 amps and you're going to be using this gauge cable, it can only be this long. So I have to go with a fatter cable to go longer so it'll work.
Yeah.
Is basically the short answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just like everything with this, it's just a whole lot of, do some research, figure out each different component and all that stuff. Yeah.
And there are links to some of this stuff in the description already. So
yeah.
if they're not already there, I know Brandon was asking that. So there's links in the description, and then whatever's not there, ping Dale or ping me or whatever, and we'll get you squared away.
Yeah. I tried to put everything we were talking about in here. Other than that video that we're going to talk about, I forgot to put his YouTube channel down there, but we'll have to make sure and mention that.
Yeah.
The final part. So you've got the solar panel that hooks up to the charge controller that hooks up to the battery. And then the battery, finally, you need to get power out of that, but it's 12 volt. So you need to turn that into AC, right? Depending on what you're running.
So you can do both. You could run. So if you're going to run 12 volt systems, you get a little 12 volt fuse block, and they're dirt cheap. And then you plug in all your 12 volt stuff to that, and then the inverter, like that one, will run all your stuff that you normally plug into your home outlet, like your toaster, your microwave, your bean grinder for your coffee beans. I mean, your normal household appliances that run on household current, you'll need to plug into an inverter.
Yeah, yeah. And the sizes of these, like this one's just 1,000 watts.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on what you need it for, if it is truly just emergency light, you've got the propane and all the other sources to be able to cook and everything.
A 200 watt or a 300 watt, and it doesn't have to be a pure sine. If all you're doing is you can get a sine wave inverter. I mean, there's 3 different main types. The pure sine wave is the cleanest signal, so it won't damage sensitive electronics like a laptop or a phone. But going back to a toaster, it doesn't matter. Get a little 200 watt inverter as long as it'll provide whatever your toaster needs to work. Get that.
Yeah.
Or get a little bit above that. So, and you're not going to have the inverter running 15 things at once, right? It's not your house. You'll have to plug in one thing, run it, unplug it, plug something else in, run it, unless your inverter can handle 2 or 3 appliances at the same time, which is why you need to know what each appliance uses so you don't blow any fuses. Which is other important step is if you're going to build a system, you need to fuse it properly, because if you don't, you can watch everything go poof up in smoke. It'll catch that fire and burn, and you don't want that.
Yeah. I've used on smaller stuff, and that's where the whole surge comes in, where it just because say your refrigerator is 800 watts, and I'm just throwing that number out there, doesn't mean that 1,000 watt inverter is going to handle that, because the startup power of something that's 800 watts is probably around 1,500 or so, way above that, and that's where you get into that whole fuse. Is basically the safety switch, just like the fuse box in our house and all that stuff. It's that safety switch to make sure that it's not going over the max, and it's not going to make your SHTF even worse than it already is.
Exactly.
Into the wilderness. That's Sean. What's going on, Sean? Said Nomad in the house.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't.
Is it hard to see?
Yeah. So let me get my cheaters on here real quick and silence my phone.
So one more thing before we get into your setup, and I just want to talk about some ways. I mean, we're going to start talking about what you're doing and all this, but and for those of you that just came in, I'm talking with Broken Nomad from on YouTube here. Kevin, been a friend of the show for a long time. We've done a lot of stuff together, but he's got his van set up. And it's basically, I think there's a lot of crossover between preparedness and between that setup because of what he's doing. In a grid down situation, we would have to, whether we're at a bug out location, we have to pay attention to how much energy we're using. If we're at home, we've got to cut back on a lot of things. Maybe even the house, only one room of the house. So there's really, I mean, you're traveling all over the place. And even though we might not be traveling all over the place, the things that you're doing sort of correlate with what we do as preppers. So I'm curious, as far as eating, cooking, things like that, what do you do as far as, do you have like one of those big propane tanks is that a disaster waiting to happen if you put one of those in a car?
I have a 20-pound tank. I'm keeping that at a friend's house. because I do not want to have that in my van with me
Driving around with a nuclear bomb.
for the most part. Later in the van build, once more things happen as time goes on, I get more money and add stuff onto it, then yeah, I would like to have a propane tank mounted on the outside, not having it inside.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, I just use the little 1 pound bottles, and I have I take off those little black plastic caps that don't do anything. I replace them with screw-on caps that are, I think they're brass. Make it a little bit more safer, so the propane doesn't leak out. Because every once in a while you'll disconnect the propane and you'll sit it there and you'll hear it hissing because it doesn't stop because something malfunctioned. At least with these little caps, it keeps that propane in and won't make it take a dirt nap. But yeah, I use for cooking. I mean, I'm not starving, dude. As you'll see in the video coming up.
You're too critical. Yeah.
As you'll see in the video coming up, I am not starving. So I use Coleman 2-burner propane stove.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah.
I use a single induction cooktop that runs on through my inverter. I'll tell you a quick story about that here in a bit when I was out in Arizona. And then I have a camp stove too from BioLite as a backup, along with my little backpacking stove as a backup. So just in case. I like having redundancies built into everything I can. So
yeah, absolutely.
Just just a propane stove. What happens if I run out of propane? Which we've seen. I mean, I've talked about this before. The whole not the whole pandemic, but the whole snowmageddon down here in Texas a couple of years ago. You go to a Walmart. Good luck finding a 1 pound bottle of propane. And on Amazon, they were like $100 and some odd for 1 pound can. Like, that's ridiculous. So have alternate ways just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just good advice about every damn thing.
Yep.
Not just, the cooking and stuff like that, but yeah, it's one of those things that, cause I'm going to start doing some prepper videos on prepper meals. I'm basically going to make a meal like I would have to in a grid down situation. And just use the food that we have and cook the way I would have to if there was no electricity or anything. So I was just kind of wondering what you do. I've got the Coleman stove I'm probably going to cook on. I've got the barbecue grill. You don't have that option, but you've got other options. You can do the same damn thing
I have a
with it.
stovetop oven. So I was out in Arizona, and this will come up a little bit later, but I went out to Arizona a few weeks ago now, and I woke up one morning and I'm going to have me some breakfast tacos, which is basically you scramble some eggs, put it in a tortilla, and you shove it in your face, and you're happy. And I used it on the induction cooktop, and I hadn't at that point used the induction cooktop in the van on the system. What better way to try it?
Yeah.
I think it took all of maybe two, and before I even turned anything on, I checked to see how much power I had, and my batteries were 100%. Solar was on float, which means that's in trickle charger mode because your batteries are so full they can't hold anything else. So I turned everything on, cracked the eggs, turned everything on, and when I got done and I turned off the induction cooktop, I had used 1% of power. So it was down to 99% power. Fine. Before I could even start eating, because I was getting over 300 watts of solar, I looked, my power was back up to 100%. That's a beautiful thing. So then when I made coffee later, same thing. I plugged in my electronic kettle, boiled my water for the coffee, used my AeroPress, looked back, I'm back to 100%. That's a beautiful thing. It's also during the day when I'm getting pretty good sunlight. If it was, rainy, no sun, I wouldn't have drained my power. So I know I could have made breakfast 50 more times. But having all these components, so I know how much is in my battery. I can calculate this is how long I can do what I want to do before I got to plug in a generator, or the things we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, TG, I have said in the chat, and I don't know if this was a comment or if she was agreeing with you, but does the price of those little tanks seem like they're high these days? Everything seems like it's high these days.
Yeah. I mean, I remember at Walmart, they used to be like $3 and change, and now they're anywhere from $5 to $8, depending on where you get them for one bottle. So I just carry, I think I have 6 in the van, 6 or 8 of them in the van. I mean, and they should last me a while, but I'd rather have a few just to have them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's jump into your, I want to make sure we have enough time to go through your stuff, but let's jump into yours, what you're doing in your van. And before and this is kind of, it shows your van and what you're doing and all that. And this is the one where you are overly critical of yourself, I think, but you were on, explain what you were doing and what channel you were on. And I'll make sure I leave this link in the show notes after we get done here tonight.
So, one of the channels I've been following for years, a guy by the name of Brian, he runs off-grid backcountry adventures. It used to be Colorado.
So Kevin's got to.
Sorry.
That's it. Yeah, it used to be a different name, but it's current, and we'll link it in the channel. But I was out there in Arizona for the weekend for a Patreon meetup. And while we were out there, he filmed a tour of my van. Now, just so you know, the van at that time was not 100% built out. It still isn't. In fact, I'm tearing it down right now to rebuild it. So what you're going to see is it is what it is. It's not complete by any stretch. I kind of threw things in there just to last for the trip. The trip out there took 3 days of driving. I was out there for the weekend, and then I came back. And I had stuff in there for that trip, and then that was it. I didn't have anything long-term in there. So what you see is what you see, and that's pretty much how it was when I was living in it for the first month as what I call my trial run.
Yeah. Like I said in the description, this is a work in progress. You've been doing it for a while, but it's still a work in progress. Yep. And it probably will be in 15 years from now, because you're going to be learning stuff. I mean, it's going to be more refined. Oh yeah. But and I'm sure that's with the same way with all the, people that in your, I guess all of you nomads, like he called you and called y'all in the show. Mm-hmm. Let me go ahead and play this, show you sort of the inside of your van, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail about all this stuff.
This van here, you just started building it out, and you're going to go full time here when?
I'm going to go back full time in the next 6 months.
Okay, cool. Sooner. Yeah. Okay, so give us a rundown of like what's your van and what do you got here?
So it's a 2022 Chevy Express 3500 extended. So it's the longest one they make in North America. Mm-hmm. And
so you got your power over there.
So I got
yeah, look, I didn't even notice all your batteries on the underside.
Yeah, so there's
Holy cow.
4 Battleborns, the inverter, charge controller, DC charger, small Bluetti for a 12 volt because I haven't got the 12 volt connected yet. Shore power isn't connected either. This is all going to get torn down probably next week because it'll be.
Did you want to like move that to a different area?
Yeah, I want to use that for drawers and storage. Right now it's.
And your Battleborn, how many amp hours?
Total of 400.
Yeah, dude, that's dope.
Plus the 2 big Bluettis. So I've got 700 and something amp hours.
Jeez. Yeah, you can pretty much push anything.
And then 400 watts all on the roof.
Okay, yep, nice panels up there. Cool, and then on the interior, this goes way back.
Yeah, it goes way back.
But you're wanting to redo it all in here, aren't you?
Yeah, so the bed goes all the way back, and it lifts up for storage.
Your bed does?
Yeah, the bed. The Laguna table.
That's nice.
Comes in really handy.
It's so big in here.
And here, let me do this.
Oh yeah, cool. You can open up the windows or open up the doors back there. Sweet.
And then.
So what do you want to do? Like, what is your? Yeah, have you already figured out the floor plan you're going to move it to?
Oh yeah.
Nice, lots of storage, dude. Good job.
So the bed will be this way, so wall to wall. But I do have the HVAC in it back here in the corner.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see that.
So I'll start the bed forward of that. So I'll have all this as open storage.
Okay.
As the garage. And the bed will come. I would like to do a full size, and then cabinets hanging from the ceiling. Storage.
And then like kind of like a living room area up here.
Yeah, like
more
kind
or
of like
less.
same like how it is now, the open area up there.
Uh-huh.
Because I'll be working in here full time too.
Yeah, yeah.
Different fridge, the counter going all the way up, a fridge back in here somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of overhead storage.
I can't hear you.
Damn mute button.
There you go.
What I was saying was, just one more time before we get on to the inner workings of your truck there, let everyone know once more what his channel is. He's got a really cool channel. They can go finish watching that video. You guys sort of were just chatting it up in the beginning and then went through that. He's got a really cool channel, a lot of other really cool videos as well. But
That's,
one more time.
Off-grid Backcountry Adventures. His name is Brian, and his dog Sierra.
Okay. Off-grid Backcountry Adventures. Yep.
Yeah, so
And I
was up
will,
there.
90% sure I'll make sure and put that link in the show notes.
On my channel, I believe I already did, but I'm
Did
not
you?
sure. But if I didn't, I will go back and add it because I want to make sure he does get credit. That's his video.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems like a really cool guy.
Oh, Brian is awesome. He's been doing this stuff for 7 or 8 years. And the first up until maybe last year, he lived in the bed of his Tacoma pickup truck. 5 foot.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me that.
6 foot 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the math on that. That's not comfortable. But he's been doing it and loving it. So
Yeah. All right. So I want the main part of that. I'm sure that and a lot of people who are watching this saw the main part of that too. The storage under your bed is pretty cool and all, but this right here, and like I said, this is why we started off
that's
with
what
sort of
everyone
the
sees.
basic
That's what
stuff.
they want to geek out on that. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we started the show with talking about the basic stuff. That way this doesn't look so foreign, even though it probably still does. It still does to me. The way you've got, I mean, I can sort of see why you've got everything set up. But if you were to give me those parts and say, here you go, I'd put them on eBay and I'd sell them because I wouldn't know what the hell to do. But explain.
strangle you if you did that because it's
Yeah. So explain sort of what and why and wherever you want to go with this. And then we'll,
simple. From the bottom up, aside from my coffee grinder and my coffee can, there's the 4 battle borings on the bottom. On the shelf above that, from left to right, is my inverter. In the middle is a solar charge controller. And on the right, the little green looking thing is my DC to DC charger. And I'll stop here to explain the DC to DC charger is connected to my alternator on the van. So I wired up a switch on my dashboard. So when I have the van on, I hit that switch and the alternator, there's a cable that goes from that little box right to my alternator. So the alternator is another source of power that shoves in 60 amps worth of power into my battery bank while the van's running. So if it's a cloudy day and I'm getting low on power, and I know I want to use my induction cooktop or my Instapot to make dinner, and I know I'm not going to have enough power to do that, I turn the van on, hit that switch, and now the alternator acts like the sun in that it provides power directly into my battery bank to boost it up so I have enough power to do whatever I need to do.
yeah.
And above that is all the bus bars and the fuses and all the cables that hook everything up together. You can actually see the cables coming in from the solar panel on the top right corner of that little loop. Because I want to make sure I had enough because I ran those first. So I wanted to make sure I had enough cable to get where it needed to get to, where all the bus bars and everything else. And sitting there on the shelf on the top right is my small Bluetti. And that's what I'm using right now, or was using for all of my 12 volt stuff, like my phone, my hotspot, my headlamps, and a few other little 12 volt things. Because my 12 volt fuse block, you can kind of see it on the left below the paper towel, that little blob of black right there. It's mounted, but I didn't connect it. And then on the other side, and we'll go into this when we get into the slideshow, is my shore power connector. So if I thought being when everything is done, I can go to Dale's house up in Colorado or Washington or whatever the hell state you're in, and I can park in your driveway and I can run out an extension cord and I say, hey, Dale, can I plug in? And I can plug that into my system. And as you'll see in the slideshow, that is another source of power to charge up the batteries, or I can run off of that power. That's a 30 amp connection. Just like if you go into a campsite, you can, have a 30 amp connection. If I had air conditioning, like a window air conditioning unit, I can run that. I can, run whatever I need to run. But that's another way to get the power that I might need as I'm traveling. I might, I'll be making stops along. I have friends in almost every state, and I plan on visiting friends when I'm on the road. And if I need the power, if it's a week of rain and I don't want to use my DC charger because I forget to hit the button, and can I plug in for the night so I can make it in the morning so nobody gets hurt,
Hey, RVing with Luck said, what are you powering up?
Everything.
Be a little more. I think you wanted a little bit more detail than that. Lots of stuff.
I'm powering all the things. Yes.
How big is that inverter?
That is a pure sine wave inverter, 2000 watts with a 4,000 watt peak.
Okay.
Meaning it can handle a surge up to 4,000 watts.
Gotcha. All right. So I don't know which order these slides are in, so I'm just going to go to the next one here. This is the top of your van, right? The solar panels?
That's the picture of the panels on the roof. There's not much more to say. The panels are mounted on the roof.
And these are these panels, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Get off there.
That's a total. They're 200 watt panels each. So I have a total of 400 watts, and they're wired in parallel. So I get double the amperage, but I don't change the voltage, meaning it stays at 12 volts. It doesn't jump to 24 or 48. That's important things to know when you do this thing. Just pick a voltage and stick to it. You can't have some things at 24 and some at 12 and some at 48. Stick to 12.
Yeah. Each of the one who said, otherwise known as the Infinity Stone inverter.
I may in the future get a bigger inverter. Right now I don't need one, but I might be running bigger things in the future, so we'll see.
Cool.
So that is what's called a solar gland. That's the solar cables coming in from the panels. Drilled a hole in the roof of my brand new van, and I put this gland on there. And pro tip, if you want to save some money, in all the forums and all the places, everyone says use butyl tape and lap sealant to seal everything up. So when you...
Hey, real quick, I just got to say, SL7 Survival School, appreciate it. I gave a super chat.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Love the show. Yeah.
Very. The money that goes to Dale, but I think, it's all good.
Hey, I'll buy you a coffee. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead with the gland
so butyl tape, most times you can get it in rolls of 50 feet. And as you can tell, that's not 50 feet. I didn't need 50 feet of it. That's wasting money. So what I did, following a tip from a friend of mine who did this when she built her camper, she took a trailer, she hauls it with her 4Runner, and she took a trailer and converted it to a camper, and this thing is sweet. And what she told me about is and I use the same adhesive that I used on the inside to mount the insulation and a whole bunch of other stuff. I just use that sealant on top and use that Flex Seal, like you see on the TV commercials where the guy waterproofs a boat and all that stuff. And I'm telling you, that stuff works awesome.
I was shocked when you told me that, because I figured that was like some sham wow crap.
She used that, and what you see in the bottom picture is one coat of that Flex Seal. And after that picture, I added one more just because I'm paranoid. That thing has been out in the rain. We just had a massive thunderstorm roll through with hail. Dry as a bone. Yes, that is Sarah. Yes, that's a shout out to Sarah. Sarah Rose is the one who gave me that.
So that's pretty interesting, because when you told me about that, I was like, that's pretty cool. And then you told me about the Flex Seal, and I was like, because it's something that really could have a whole lot of uses. I'm gonna have to try some now, because if it actually does work and it's not just that gimmicky crap, I could see a whole bunch of situations from a preparedness perspective.
Yeah, I'll be using that for when I add in the ceiling, the roof vent, the max air fan, and the exhaust fans later. I'll be using it for that, and a bunch of other stuff. I know Chevy is known for their roofs and their hoods kind of rusting kind of quick. So I may be buying a second bottle and just giving a spray on the roof just to kind of, hold that off a little bit more.
Now, I have seen the commercial where the dude basically does the Flex Seal's a boat, basically. Yeah. I don't know about all that.
I actually now believe that after seeing
it
work. Yeah, after seeing how it works and talking to other people who have used it, I believe it.
I think there's a video you should be doing in the future, Kevin.
I'm not going to build my own boat, not just yet.
Be a Flex Seal ambassador.
But no, I mean, that saved me a ton of money.
Yeah. Okay, so this is. Let me go back to this. Is in your setup, right?
Yeah. So that's the
middle blue piece
on the right. If you look at the little bluetti, which is on top, if you look straight down, it's zip tied. Well, it's tied in with. I screwed it in, but I zip tied the cables to keep them from flopping all around. But that's my shore power connection. That thing where if I come to Dale's house, I plug in the extension cord. That is what powers it, converts the household current to 30 amp, and it's tied in to my bus bar so that can power my system and my batteries. It doesn't just charge the batteries, it provides power to the system. If I'm using power, it'll help supply it. I'm not using power, it all gets dumped into the batteries.
So if you were, I'm sure it's the same thing. You come to my house or somebody's house, you go to an RV park, same type of.
Same exact thing. Yep.
Okay. So an RV has all this stuff included. You just had to piece and part it out. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You buy a jackery or you put a bunch of stuff together is what you did.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, putting the hole in the side of the van, putting the plug in there, plugging that into it. Yep.
And when you first sent these to me, I didn't know what was what with all this stuff, but this is all basically information. Did you piece all these parts together because you could get them in one app to kind of monitor everything?
Yeah, so that's one good thing I like about Victron is one app on your phone, and as you add a device, you add it into the app. It'll actually detect it. It'll bring it and say, "Hey, found a new app. I found a new thing. This yours?" Yep, save it, give it a name, and done.
Now, does that battery or inverter or whatever have to be, are there certain things that will pair with that and certain things that won't?
No,
certain products?
It's plugged directly into the extension cord, basically.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So when I pull my van into your garage, I take one end of the extension cord, plug it into your outlet in your garage, and I plug the other end, just like in an RV. There's a little plug on the outside of my van. I lift up the little rubber protector so no water gets in there, plug it in. It gets plugged into that, and that is tied into the whole system. So instantly 30 amps of power come swishing in and make me happy.
Yeah, what I'm talking about though is like that app will monitor your charge controller, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
or the batteries, the shore power. Yep.
yeah. So does the charge controller have to be a charge controller that's compatible with that?
They're all Victron. It's,
Oh, okay. That answers my question. So yeah, you can't just go buy a cheapy little Amazon charge controller and expect to hook it up to this setup.
This is the Victron app on your phone, and that's why I like the Victron components, because they're rock solid. Not all of them are Bluetooth. You have to actually buy the Bluetooth enabled one. You have to look for that model. But yeah, I have 3 Victron devices, and that way I can pick up my phone and see. And we'll get to that slide at the last slide, and you'll see what I'm looking at. But I can tell the shore power. The broken Nomad shore power. It's in bulk charge, and I'm getting 13.56 volts, and I'm pulling in 30 amps because I'm plugged into, the power.
Yeah.
So I'm getting 30 amps of charge. My DC to DC charger does 60 amps. So this will be half as slow as is running on the alternator. But if I'm parked somewhere for a week, I can just leave this plugged in, and I'm getting a constant supply of 30 amps until everything is filled up. Then it goes to absorption, and then float, and then you're done. You're maxed out. You're full on power.
So it's your redundancy, or say you're driving through Oregon or something,
yep.
and you're not getting the juice you need.
Exactly. And then in the next slide, it shows the history of what you did over the last day or 2 days or a week or whatever. So if you look at it, it shows it bulk charged. Where's my cheaters at? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, that's pretty small. I can't either.
And it's on the phone, I can see it, but in this picture. So for 2 hours and 46 minutes, I got 83.2 amp hours worth of power plugged in. And then it went to absorption for 42 minutes, and I got another 2.6 amp hours. Then I went to, the next one should be float. And then, yeah, it just tells you what it progressively, just like a car charger. You plug in a trickle charger on a car battery, and it'll initially flood it with as much power as it can until it hits a certain point. Then it slows down until you're maxed out. It can't hold anything else. Same concept. But this actually shows you, hey, yesterday when I was plugged in, this is what happened. I got this much power. So I know it was down that much. There's all the stats under there. And, if you look down, 1 day, 6 hours, 126 amp hours, 1 full cycle completed.
See, I geek out on all these stats because you want to know how efficient your whole system's being. And granted, this is the juice you're kind of pulling, right? But this isn't from the solar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you know what? From a preparedness perspective, a lot of us don't really think about that. But if you, I guess if you lived in Oregon or somewhere like that where you got sporadic sunshine, maybe you do. But this would be a way of just kind of being able to top that stuff off. And then in some sort of, situation where the grid is down, some sort of emergency disaster situation, you would have to figure out how to whatever you can get from solar, but at least you've got everything topped off and you're not solely dependent on that.
And then the other thing, while we're on this topic, because I like redundancy, one of the other things I have is a propane generator. So it runs on those little 1 pound bottles of propane or 20-pound tank or whatever I want to feed it. But it's a generator that runs on propane, not gasoline. So I don't have to carry another fuel source. But let's say I blow a fuse and can't replace the fuse because I forgot to order spares or whatever, or it broke or something happened and I can't use my DC to DC charger. I can't use my alternator to charge the batteries. It's been raining for a week, so the solar's out. And I'm not near a town to plug in. So I can take my generator out, run that on a bottle of propane for 8 hours, and charge my system that way.
Yeah, another redundancy. Yeah. All right. So this one, why does it keep going back to the screen?
I don't know.
We sort of talked about this earlier, your charge controller, but that's hooked up in this whole.
So the solar panel is on the roof. 2 cables come in. They go through a circuit breaker and they plug directly into that. That determines how much power from the panels makes it into the batteries. And again, that the multi-point tracking thing, that's the more efficient one. So I maximize the sun getting into the batteries through that thing. And that also shows up in the app because it's Bluetooth. So I can see how much I'm actually getting from solar.
Yeah. And then what do we got next here?
So that's showing at the time that I took that picture, I was getting 344 watts of solar at that time. And that's again on the app on my phone. So I can see how much I'm getting in solar. And there's all the voltage, all the information I want is right there. I'm getting 25 amps just from solar. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That is what I was talking about earlier. I geek out on stuff like this. I'd love to see exactly what my system is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when somebody, asks, hey, how much do you get per hour or per day or whatever, you get a really clear picture of how efficient your solar panels are, how efficient your setup is,
Yep.
what sort of waste you're getting, and all of those different things. So,
Yep.
TGI have said, good night, got to run.
Thanks, Debbie.
All right. So, and we're almost out of here anyway, too. So
Yeah.
now this is the shunt you were talking about earlier.
Correct.
Explain what exactly this does and why it's important in your whole setup.
So we'll see it on the next slide, but that's basically in line in between the battery and the bus bar. And that shows right there where it says TBN batteries. The battery voltage is at 14.19 volts. The current is 0.14 amps, which means I'm using 0.14, which means my fridge was running. That's kind of averaging what my fridge uses. I am 100% state of charge, means my batteries are filled and running at 0.14 amps. I have unlimited power. So if you look at remaining time, infinite. So if I don't plug anything in and the sun doesn't change, because I'm also getting in 14 watts, because again, I'm at 100%. My batteries are 100% full, right? You can only put a gallon of milk in a gallon container. So the batteries are full, and that particular day when I took that picture, I had been getting in 200 and something watts of solar until the batteries get full. Then that charge controller says, okay, I know I'm getting in 244 watts. I can only put in 14 watts. That's all it needs to keep it at that level. So if the sun never goes down and I never plug anything in or turn anything on, I have infinite amount of power.
Yeah.
But I can see all that on my phone in one screen. How much is coming in, how much is going out. And I know, hey, I'm good to go.
Hey, Brandon in the chat. I'd like to see what I said earlier. I'd like to see exactly what my system's doing, kind of waste I'm getting. Yeah. I didn't realize how that sounded, but yeah, I don't need an app for that. I know exactly what kind of waste I'm getting. Maybe get some sort of microscope or something down my throat or one of those cameras and see how the system's doing. But I know exactly what waste I'm getting.
And yes, Brendan, my fridge is running. My fridge really doesn't use a whole lot of power.
Yeah. I think he's kind of a smart ass. So I think he was more of the joke of, is your refrigerator running? I don't know. It's hard to tell with Brandon sometimes. So very cool. I'm not even going to ask you the money question about how much all that costs you, because it's really hard to say anyway, because of all the things you've done beforehand compiled with all the stuff you've done now. We've shown a couple links of what it costs.
It's under $10,000, and I don't know how much under 10,000, but it's not cheap.
Yeah.
But it's also over years. So
yeah. What did you say? Over 10,000?
It's under 10,000, but I don't know by how much.
Oh, while I was talking there, I could have swore you said 110,000. I was like, what?
No.
You adding a van in and you buy some property?
The property is coming.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, very cool setup. And I think, and we were talking before the show too. I think we were talking about it yesterday, how preppers have their bug out vehicles and really ought to think about stuff like this. Maybe not the long term like you're doing, but certainly the stuff that we were talking about in the beginning, that smaller scale, something that if you're bugging out to your bug out location or something, maybe a couple days, something like that.
You can get what they call suitcase panels, which are solar panels that fold out like a suitcase, and you can stand them up on the ground. You don't have to mount them permanently on the top of your vehicle, but you can stow them in your vehicle so that if you're going for the weekend and you want to, I don't know, you want to go camping or something for a weekend or a holiday weekend where you have 4 or 5 days, and you can have that all in your vehicle and pull it out when you need it. If you don't need it, you don't use it. But you don't have to have it permanent. You can have a little system that you use on weekends, and then over time build it, or go out and buy a Blue Eddy or a Jackie or an EcoFlow or whatever other all-in-one that you want. Take it out of the box, charge it up at home, and you're good to go.
Yep. Hey, Lisa's here. She said awesome conversation.
Thank you, Lisa.
She's the DIY diva now. She's got 2 YouTube channels now because one isn't enough.
She's spatial.
Yeah. Brandon said one question. If anybody's got anything, I'll answer questions. Otherwise, we're going to get out of here. But said, what's the long-term goal? House, cabin, or nomad?
There's a couple. So the short term is to save money by not paying rent, travel the country, see people, and travel the country and knock things off my bucket list. Grand Canyon, spend the winter in Key West, Florida, explore the mountains of Colorado, go to Moab, travel. In the process, find out where I want to settle down later, and then find out where I want to buy a chunk of land. And then I'm not the homesteading type, but either build a cabin or do like Brian did, buy like an older, well-built camper and park it there as my home base. And then if I want to go out traveling, then I hop in the van and go out for however long I'm going to go out. Nope, not a boat. I kind of grew up with rowboats and John boats and stuff. Boats are awesome, but nah.
Especially if you got Flex Seal.
Yeah.
Hey, that's kind of what Lisa's parents do. I mean, they have their home, they're settled down, but they used to have the big, huge bus. Mm-hmm. And as they've gotten older, they shrunk their RV down to, their size. But that's what they do. Whenever they feel like it, they'll just go take off and travel to Alaska. I mean, wherever they want to go.
Yeah. It's the same exact thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who want to travel the world. My thing is there's so much of my own country I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Let me see that first. Then when I've seen all the places I want to see and go all the places I want to go, and then I'll go other places. I mean, I've been other places too, but thank you, Uncle Sam. But I want to see what is in my country. And while I'm doing that, look for, hey, this would be great to have a 10-acre plot that I can put this and put that and use that as a home base. But in the process, I want to travel around and see stuff and see people, stop it and see you and Lisa again. And a bunch of other friends I got in Colorado and all over the country, basically. So, yeah.
Fan Life Plus says, as long as you're wearing shorts everywhere you go.
Yes, Matt, I am wearing shorts right now. I'm not. Oh, yeah. I'm wearing shorts right now. Thank you very much.
You'd be traveling to Alaska in like March wearing shorts.
I wear shorts in winter, so it's all good for me.
That's insane. And it's not like you're, a novice with the wilderness stuff or anything like that either. So,
I think I've been outside a couple times.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, Lisa, I will be over. I'll call you first to let you know.
All right. Well, we are going to get out of here because now we're just kind of having a conversation. So, which is all right. But we've been on here an hour and a half, and I am an old man, so the bathroom's calling and all that fun stuff. So
I'm older than you.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're to the point now that it really doesn't matter. You know, a couple of years in the grand scheme of things really is a drop in the bucket. So
if anybody has any questions, if you go to my website, thebrokennomad.com, hit the contact page and just fill it out, and that'll send me an email. Or if you go to my YouTube channel, which if you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, you know this already. But if you don't know my channel, The Broken Nomad, my contact email is there on the about page. Hit me up, ask me questions, find me on Twitter or wherever else. And hold on, I have to see what Matt is saying now. My early bird dinner. What? That's weird. Matt's weird.
Yeah. Hey,
anyway.
we got to Darren left a comment before the show even started. Said he was here, and then he ghosted us. I don't think he showed up for the show. So we got to give Darren a yelling at.
You'll spank him.
Yeah.
Put your glasses on to read it too. Yes, I'm old, Matt. I don't think you understand. I'm old. I'm an old guy. I need my cheaters to read this stuff. Yes.
All right. Well, we are going to get out of here tonight. Everyone in the chat, everyone on Kevin's channel, my channel, appreciate y'all joining in tonight. If you can ask, the person to ask is Kevin. If you have questions for me, I can give you some decent knowledge. But if it's a complicated question, I'm probably going to pass you off to Kevin.
And I'll probably refer you to the Solar Forum, because I know what I know that I did, but I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. Like I said before, I know enough to build my system, and I know the whys behind it. Anything more than that, I'll refer you out to people who know a lot more than me and places that get really good information.
Yeah, which you know quite a bit about, yeah. So because you've had to go through all of that stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I've been there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, once again. Appreciate y'all joining in. Everyone listening to the podcast. Again, yeah. Hopefully you understood everything that was going on. If not, you'll have to come watch the video and all that. But appreciate y'all joining in tonight. Take care and prepare. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, y'all.